Hello, everyone. Good day, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Park Cannon, and I serve as the state representative in Atlanta, Georgia for House District 58. Georgia is proud to be represented here at the LGBTQ Leaders Conference in this 36th year of convening. Today, we will have a breakout session on climate change and its effects, where we will discuss the local, state, federal, and global policy, as well as legislative solutions that could minimize the impact of climate change and start to address the inequalities created by it. Before we introduce our panelists from around the United States, we have a word from our sponsor, Toyota. Please welcome Stephen Lewis out of Texas, the General Manager for Diversity and Inclusion.
Thank you, Park, and good afternoon, everybody. So I am a Victory Institute board member, but also I have a day job working for Toyota. And so on behalf of the 35,000 employees in the U.S., the entire Toyota family is just so proud and just so delighted to be able to sponsor not only the Victory Institute overall, but especially this panel on the environment, which is a topic of importance to all of us here. So, you know, in the diversity and inclusion space, we often talk about the concept of intersectionality. And what that means is we have many identities, many interests. We're all complex human beings. And so this particular discussion this afternoon checks a lot of those intersectional boxes for me. And so for the first one, I would say that I love working in the auto industry. You know, I like the products. I like thinking about what the future of transportation holds, and it's so complex. It's just so fascinating. And then, you know, another intersectionality point for me as a gay man, political representation is really important. And that's why I'm so proud of what Victory Institute is doing, you know, from the candidate recruiting to the trainings that we do to the intern work to the international work. It's really important to lay the foundation for the next generation of leaders in this country at all levels. And then, you know, finally, I would say that the environment itself is very important to me. It has been since a very early age. And so with this panel today, I'm just so happy that we have a blue ribbon panel of experts representing government, industry, and the NGO world. And to be honest, it's going to take all of us working together to get this figured out because the issue is so big and so complex. So anyway, once again, thank you for being part of this. Thank you for being here. And Park, I'll get it back to you to get us going.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much. I know that, you know, you're coming from Texas and we're all over the country. And so it really matters that you have taken the time out today to speak with us and to help us plan for the future. As you said, it's an intersectional future. Representation matters, and certainly the personal is political. So we will look to you in the future as we learn more about what Toyota can do for our communities. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to introduce our first panelist, and this is a place, you know, Kentucky, where you have to think about how we talk about climate change in long, linear, homogeneous areas. So I'm really excited that we actually have David Absher here with us today, making it clear that as the Senior Manager of Sustainability and Regulatory Affairs for Environmental Sustainability at Toyota Motor North America, there are some things we might need to know. Please introduce yourself and help us understand your role in this issue.
Thank you for that introduction, Park. And it's certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to participate in this great event. As the manager of the environmental sustainability for Toyota Motor North America, I can tell you all of my days are dedicated to working with all of my colleagues across this big company and trying to find ways to improve our environmental footprint and to transition our company to a truly sustainable industry company. And from a personal perspective, I've been a lifelong conservationist, and in my adult life, I've become a sustainability practitioner. And so it's always encouraging for me personally and professionally to see so many people focusing on climate change and find ways to come together and work together so that we can, bring a lot of different perspectives, if you will, and a lot of different ideas, and hopefully new, fresh ideas, so that we can make some of the much needed change that we need to make. And so, as always, I try to gain insights, and when I have an opportunity to attend events. And so, it's really a pleasure to be here with everyone. And I want to thank you again for having me here this evening.
Well, we know that you are a subject matter expert, so we thank you for being open to getting new ideas, fresh ideas, and gaining insight in really important areas such as climate change. We could start talking from a number of different perspectives. And so we will do that as we go through this panel and allow for these free-flowing ideas to maybe not always be, continuous, but to give us something to think about in our own communities. Additionally, I want to thank, Associate Press Secretary Rebecca Kling for joining us today. You are a part of the Beyond Coal campaign for the Sierra Club, which means that there's a lot out there in the media and there's a lot to be messaged. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about the work you're doing?
Absolutely. So glad to be here, and having participated in the Victory Institute's candidate and campaign training in the past and having attended in DC in the past, it's lovely to be joining virtually this year, remotely this year. And what I do at the Sierra Club is work with the Beyond Coal campaign, which aims to end the use of coal power in the United States. And since the campaign was launched a little over a decade ago, we've had over 300, not quite 340 plants that have either retired or had their retirement announcements. And we have a little under 200 left to go. And in some places, we're even starting to shift from talking about moving beyond coal to moving beyond fossil gas. There's a attempt by the fossil fuel industry to say that we need fossil gas as a bridge fuel from coal to clean renewables. And the Sierra Club's firm position is that the facts just don't back that up, that we're at a point where renewable energy, most commonly a mix of solar and wind and battery storage, has the ability to be safe, reliable, and in more and more cases, less expensive than the fossil fuel alternative. So we're helping push at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level that we need to move beyond not just coal, but fossil fuel, and really focus on how we can use renewables to make the world better. A lot of the time in the climate movement, we talk about the horrible things that are happening or that might happen, and we need to, but we also want to focus on how this shift can make the world better and cleaner and safer.
I certainly agree with that. I've spent some time in Chicago and Illinois, where you are, Rebecca, and this idea that we can take firm stances on environmental issues is so important. Sometimes we might feel as though we just have to go along with what's saying in the media, but instead, like you're saying, we can make the point, this is economically feasible and better. So thank you for being here with us today. I am so excited to introduce an assemblyman from California to this panel as well. Hello, Assemblymember Evan Lowe. How are you? Give us an introduction. And what would you like to talk about today?
Well, thanks so very much, Rep. Cannon. It's so exciting to be on this panel with distinguished guests, but also to see you. And frankly, you've been an inspiration to so many of us on the West Coast as well, and doing the work that you continually do. It's not like you have anything else going on in Georgia, as we talked earlier, but you're deeply committed to all of us. And so we are grateful to you, and we'll look forward to helping support the efforts that you're doing as well. Of course, as a fellow young person, a millennial person of color, part of our community, it's important that when we talk about environmental justice, we also must recognize the importance of young people and the engagement of young people, whether it be on voting rights, etc. So it's important when we think about the exciting work of environmental justice that we talk about the generational shift that is also required for us in making this change. But I hail from Silicon Valley in the state of California in San Jose. And the work that we do is to also bring the business climate together along with environmental justice, and saying that we need to partner and utilizing technologies that exist to advancing the issues that we need to work on. So it's not a zero-sum game, but let's utilize technology in an effective manner in investing in our future. That's when we think about that there is no high-speed rail in the United States, and you think about many of these other countries, the utilization of technology, that in fact, this is old technology. So how do we make sure that we are focused on technology, transportation as it relates to the environment? Similarly, Rep. Cannon, you know, we tend to live like it's Groundhog's Day in the state of California. The notion and the fact that 7 of the 10 largest wildfires in the state of California happened within the past 5 years. And so when we think about Groundhog's Day and saying, wait, I thought we saw records being reported last year. And that's a significant problem to which we need to be real with ourselves and saying, hey, let's wake up, let's address this issue at hand. And what do we need to do? You know, President Trump referenced that California should just rake the leaves and take care of this problem, when the reality is this: less than 5% of open space in the state of California are actually that of state property. The rest of it is that of federal land. So we need to partner with the administration at hand to ensure that we're working with the federal, state, and local agencies. But this is not a problem just in the state of California. This is a new challenge that we all face as public representatives, and encouraging us to lift our communities up to go together collectively, while also recognizing the fact that much of the environmental impacts has a disproportional impact to communities of color and those in different socioeconomic brackets. And so we must keep that in mind when tackling these issues.
You're right. Listen, California is so diverse that you are sometimes able to see these voices, you know, hear these voices. You've got business owners and students who are committed to this. So we will come back and talk with you a little bit more about this idea of environmental justice. I know that NCEL, for us environmental legislators, has created a working group on environmental justice. So we'll have to tell people about that after we talk a bit with David. David, you have the name of my brother and my father. So I feel like I could ask you anything. This year in Georgia, we had a piece of legislation that was passed by the majority, and it was a little controversial. It said, if you put in money to the budget for environmental remedy, it needs to go to environmental remedy. It was run through as a transparency bill, but at the end of the day, we know after we read these bills, what does it do? What it does is provides funding if your community has old tires just dumped in them, for you to be able to remediate that land and also remove those tires. And we had a very public dialogue on this issue because it was up for referendum on the statewide ballot. So Georgians are ready for this idea of action that we can take that still talks to the auto industry and talks about what we can do to move forward. Can you please share with us some of these, fresh ideas and how Toyota is looking at this issue of climate change from the inside out?
Yeah, I guess the most important piece to mention is the overarching structure and the mission that we've undertaken to address climate change and really managing resources and water overall. And in October of 2015, we made public what we call the Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050. And so for years, we'd been pursuing things on a more or less 5-year action plan basis. And it became very clear that we needed a long-term structure, a strategy that looks beyond just the next 4 or 5 years, but really looks out into the future and what our ultimate goals are and how those align with society's needs. And so the Toyota Environmental Challenge then addresses climate change directly through, because we found that that's material to our business and what we do, of course.
Wow,
and
that's interesting. I mean, thinking about 2050 in 2020 means y'all are 30 years ahead. I mean, this is a new adult. This is a long way away. These are a lot of fiscal cycles. As legislators, we might think 2 years or a year ahead, and we have all these economic crashes. And so what role do you think that, private corporations might play and government agencies? Should we be looking into 2050 metrics as well?
Well, I think we do have to think in those terms, but you have to also put together things that you can do in the right now to address things. And so we develop 5-year action plans and we implement those plans, but we do have annual reviews and make revisions to our action plans based on what's going on in real time and also new findings and things that we learn along the way. And so it's a constantly evolving undertaking. And I think the word I would use would be adaptive. And so as we learn, we've recommitted ourselves to be more adaptive to we know what the needs are going to be long term. How do we adapt ourselves in real time and make the changes that need to be made right now to help better position us to do that? And so those changes take form in strategy. They take form in how we budget. They take form in how we allocate our internal resources and organize, if you will, organizations. And so those are the types of things that I see we've made great progress in, especially over the last 8 years. I can tell you that this next action plan that we're going to put forward, the 5-year action plan, is the 7th environmental action plan. So that means we've been doing action plans for 30 years. And so the next one will carry us through year 35. And I've been with the company for 32 years. And maybe there's folks that aren't that old on the call, but so we've been doing this for a long time and refining on our approach. But we recognize that there's a real need to step things up.
Oh, David, thank you for working my whole life on this issue at Toyota. You sound like you've been a part of the Council of State Government programs out of Kentucky. They talk about this idea of adaptive leadership as well, and how even if we don't yet have a solution, that's okay because we don't yet know the problems, but we can certainly plan to bring forward some new ideas. One new idea that I was, so interested in was how we bring forward those who don't yet use cars as drivers, whether that means that they are unlicensed or maybe underage or maybe just uninterested in doing that. How do we bring those people to this conversation?
Well, I think it's an educational process. Bringing those people into the process really requires us to rethink how we actually educate ourselves about what's important in the world. If you go, and so looking at the folks I can see on the screen, most of you are a bit younger than I am, and I have 3 children, and so it's very clear to me that they are receiving better information, if you will, than I received as during my early childhood, and they look at things differently. They're better informed and they have access to a lot more information, and so I think trying to develop curriculum that is science-based and factual, and educating people at an early age and sparking, that creativity and ingenuity that they naturally have for the most part. And that prepares the next round of leaders that are going to carry us on out to 2050, if you will, considering where we are now. And I think that's very, very important. Is critical. Education is a critical piece. Engagement is a critical piece. And listening, and getting new perspectives is a critical piece.
Well, we'll keep looking to you. Let's go over to Rebecca. You were telling us a little bit about these ideas for the future. You take a firm stance now and you march forward towards the future. I think that's beautiful. And here in Georgia, we've been trying to do some of that too. I think everyone on this call can think of their closest Sierra Club and picture, some information that is unbiased and really helpful come before them. And here in Georgia, we started to say, where on the books do we have out of date policies that would fund out of date fuel systems, and moving beyond this idea of coal and nuclear power and digging for oil. In Georgia, if you dig for oil and you find it, you strike it, there's still a provision in our Constitution where the governor will pay you $250,000. We propose legislation to repeal this along with NCEL because we feel like it's staking a claim and moving backwards. Tell us more, Rebecca, about how we can all be forthcoming in our ideas and move forward with them on the important issues like coal and fuel.
One of the things that I think the environmental movement has not done the best job historically is relating why being pro-environment and why working to combat the climate crisis is a good thing. We've talked about why not doing those is a bad thing, and we've had photos of polar bears on thin ice, and we've had photos of oil spills, and we've had stories of deforestation, and we've had stories of health issues around coal plants. And those are important parts of the puzzle, but we haven't painted the picture successfully of what does a walkable neighborhood look like that is powered by clean and renewable electricity with low bills, that is delivered safely to communities, where public transit is frequent and accessible and clean, and where communities that were dependent on coal or fossil fuel income and tax revenue and jobs are supported through what is referred to now as a just transition, not just any transition from coal to clean, but a just and equitable transition, so that we are focusing on family sustaining jobs in clean energy. And we're focusing on schools that are supported from the tax revenues and income that come from community solar gardens. And we're talking about farmers who supplement their income by leasing small parts of their land for parts of wind farms. And rather than simply saying, here's the bad and the scary stuff, which is true and important and things that we also need to talk about, we also need to frame what are the exciting parts? What are the things to look forward to? And as David mentioned, and as we've all touched on, we've thought a lot in the environmental movement of what we don't want the future to look like. How do we talk about what we do want the future to look like? And that part of that has to be involving communities that are at the front lines right now. And whether that's poorer communities or communities of color right around coal plants, whether that's Louisiana's Cancer Alley, which is predominantly Black communities around industries that are chemical industries and extractive industries, whether that's Native communities in Alaska. How are we working with and for these communities and not just saying, well, we got to save the polar bears? I want to save the polar bears, but that's just the start. That's not it might be appropriate to have an event said only the beginning. That's just the start. That's not the whole thing.
I love it. I totally agree. I had never heard about Louisiana's Cancer Alley. Wow, that one really hit me. Here in Georgia, we are still funding our nuclear power plant Vogtle. It is over budget. It's been taking a lot longer than we thought it would. And in the meantime, that means the families around Shell Bluff, Georgia, the fish swimming in the water. Tell us a little bit more on a kind of national perspective, how, even though we want to focus on our local issues, maybe it's coal over here, maybe it's water quality over here, how do we broaden our perspective and message that effectively as we go forward?
Part of it is to remember that the way that our national energy grid works, our power goes into a big bucket and it gets sent all over the country. So as someone in Chicago, I may today be getting power from a different plant than I am tomorrow because the grid is adjusting and has room for improvement, but is trying to load balance and make sure that across the country, everyone is getting safe and reliable electricity. So when we're talking about that Georgia nuclear plant, that's not just a Georgia issue because the recipients of that power may not just be in Georgia. And we're thinking about not only what we're importing into our states and whether that's the type of state we want to be in and the type of community we want to be in, but also what we're exporting to others and whether as Illinois residents or as Georgia residents or as California residents, do we want to be exporting power that's coming from nuclear or coal or fossil fuels? And very often for both health and safety reasons and increasingly for financial reasons, the answer is no, we don't want to be doing that.
I love it. That's really helpful. Some of our local groups here, kind of like you said, the Audubon Society here, they care a lot about our animals, our birds, our species that are endangered. And they pivoted their work because of the recent federal conversations on possibly not protecting this important class of birds and, species who repopulate our trees and help us grow green energy. And so I'll, lastly, just ask you about what you were saying with how we can empower our economy with new ideas, with solar. We tried to write it in our code this year that we need to start getting into solar in Georgia because we were realizing, all right, maybe wind wasn't working for Georgia. Maybe hydro isn't here ready yet in Georgia, but solar, certainly. Talk to us a little bit more about the economic perspective of new ideas.
Absolutely. There are two things that I really want to highlight. First is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. That what's right for a community in what's right for one community in Georgia may not be right for the next community in Georgia. and what's right for Georgia may not be right for other states. That said, increasingly a combination of wind, solar, and battery technology today is less expensive than fossil fuels and just as safe and reliable. And there's often this misconception that wind and solar and batteries in particular are too expensive, that coal and fossil fuels is just so much less expensive. And when you look at the math, and I'm not going to pretend to have done, I am not the one doing the data analysis, but the Sierra Club has some phenomenal analysts. It's less expensive today to replace these coal plants or these gas plants with wind and solar and battery. And at a state level and at a national level, making sure that when we're looking at where our power is coming, we're really being honest about what our options are. And that increasingly wind and solar and battery are an economic option, one that's going to drive jobs, one that's going to build tax revenue, and one that is right, not just for the environmental reasons, but for the economic reasons as well. The one other thing that I want to touch on is making sure that those benefits aren't just hoarded by wealthy utilities or aren't just limited to benefiting the state tax base and not the local communities. So things like solar gardens. And what that idea is if I as an individual can't afford solar panels, maybe my neighborhood can, or maybe a local church or school can. There are cases of schools building solar gardens that fund teacher salaries because they're able to sell that electricity back to the neighborhood. And second, making sure that renters and folks who are not owning their homes are able to access these benefits. And some of that is you pump less expensive energy into the grid and your power bill goes down, and that's a good thing. But also making sure that programs are focusing on renters as well, so that people who aren't homeowners, and we know that very often that's communities of color, or very often that's communities that are not having structural advantages and privileges, making sure that folks who are not already winning in this economy are able to take advantage of those benefits. And that's something that the Sierra Club takes very seriously, and that I am excited to hear of elected officials and of business also focusing on that.
Yes. Well, we appreciate you. We will look forward to connecting with our local Sierra clubs, but also knowing if we just need some support on that national conversation, that we can reach out to you, Rebecca. And, you know, Assemblyman, I know that everything is up in the air right now with our legislative sessions. Here in Georgia, we don't know when we're going to gavel in. We're not sure when our environmental subcommittee is going to meet. So tell me, just orient us. What's going on in California with your sessions? How many members do you have? What committees do you serve on? And how can we start to look for this environmental topic in California?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rep. Cannon. But I want to, again, commend the conversation around this too, and recognizing that we're all in this together. And while we want to be aspirational, we must bring all communities along. And frankly, having those difficult conversations where there might be some conflict, for us to be able to articulate the values collectively and why it's in our collective best interest. And sometimes there might be a short-term sacrifice, but how do we ensure that this is a long-term aspirational goal to bring us all along together? And I think that's the tough job that you and I, frankly, have to do in leading our communities and our constituencies collectively along in that regard. Very specifically, each assembly district here in California, I represent close to 500,000 people, and my district is in Silicon Valley. And oftentimes you might think that it's either jobs and or the environment, when in fact that's not the case, which is what I referenced earlier about how to ensure that we are collectively in this conversation about what we need to tackle and address. But I want to make it very clear that this conversation about environmental justice could not be had without recognizing the importance of the millennial and Gen Z generation, which is why it's so important to have people like yourself serving in office and saying why it's relevant to you, because that is the conversation. That's why you've seen the incredible work of Greta Thunberg. You've seen the Sunrise Movement. Here in California, I proposed legislation in a ballot measure to allow 17-year-olds to vote in primary elections so that they too can have a voice in saying that previous generations have abdicated the responsibility to engage and address this issue at hand. And why is this important? Because it's important that we talk about facts that exist. In the state of California, for example, the cost of wildfire mitigation about a decade ago was $90 million in the state of California. Fast forward just 10 years later to the present day, it's close to $900 million. $900 million simply alone on that wildfire mitigation. And so when we talk about how this is relevant to everyday people, it's important that we see this in everyday references, relatable to everyday people. And again, yes, we like to have this badge of honor in California being the home of the progressive movement, when yet we realize that we still have some work to be done. But let's be honest, let's be frank, and have tough conversations about addressing this collectively. And again, Rep. Cannon, I think that's the hard work that you and I have to do in bringing it, not just our own party and own political affiliations, but others, those who might say that they're more on the line of the conservative viewpoint. How is this in their best interest to support these initiatives as well?
Wow. So I love the Sunrise Movement. They've been here at the state capitol with me as well, just helping out to get some policy moving forward. Oh my gosh, Greta, I want to meet her after COVID-19. She might be taller than me. I don't care.
But what you know what we need to do? We need to have like a millennial and Gen Z electeds do a Zoom with her.
That would be simple. We can do it. I know it takes so much to put this conference on. I want to thank everyone who's working hard behind the scenes to put this on right now. We love you and we appreciate you. Tell me about this, Evan. What does a wildfire smell like? What does it feel like when it's spreading? Give us that data from on the ground about these wildfires you're experiencing in California.
Just imagine this frightening, deathly scenario. It's a death sentence. What do I mean by this? We're currently having a COVID pandemic in which, as we speak, the state of California is going into additional lockdowns, similar to that of what it looked like in March. So think about this then. If you are elderly, seniors, have health issues, and or you have children at home. So the government, we are saying stay at home, shelter in place. Shelter in place during COVID pandemic, and yet then you have wildfires. And so shelter in place because there are harms in going outside, not only the COVID pandemic, but you can't even get fresh air because it's harmful levels given the wildfires. And then you have the utilities then because of wildfires having rolling blackouts. So your power is off. Shelter in place. Your food is going to spoil. You can't go out and getting food because it's harmful to go outside because of wildfires. And yet you have distance learning, but you have no power because there's the wildfires. This is unacceptable. This is the United States. We're the most powerful country in the world. And Representative Cannon, this is, again, in California, we think, well, this is Silicon Valley, this is California. This is a third world country. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable, period, full stop. So that's why when we talk about our movement and talking about addressing climate change and saying, oh, this is too radical, this can't be done, we must be aspirational because this is unreal. This is unacceptable to everyday people. And it's important that we as leaders lead and that we set the good example by being aspirational and having the goals and bringing industries with us and bringing residents with us, because this is a real challenge that we're facing. And as I referenced earlier, we see this every single year in which we're seeing reports of record heat, record-breaking wildfires. And we say to ourselves, this happened last year. Wait, I thought last year was a record. And the records keep on shattering. So again, this is a lens into the future, not just for California, but for the rest of the state and the nation. So it's important that we are treading notes and that we get support from a new administration and recognizing that climate change is real.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to your point, if you're thinking about the flooding that has happened because of natural disasters in Louisiana, or you think about a wildfire that's happening in California because of natural reasons, they might smell different, they might feel different, but the families and the communities and businesses are suffering. So as a state, assembly member, how do you help provide comfort and support in these times when it seems like not only are some of the tangible factors of our lives out of control, but also maybe Mother Nature, or do you remind people that this has to do with what we've done in the past and where we haven't been in the past? How do you support your communities through this?
Well, I equally want to know what your secret magic sauce is on this as well, and being a good public representatives for the people that we serve and work for. So I hope you'll answer that. But at least I think the level of authenticity, to be responsive and to be accessible, so that when a resident contacts you and says, my power is off, and I'm calling the 1-800 number to the utility and I'm getting an automated response, do I have to go out and get a generator? Do I have to seek out support and getting support on salvaging my food? And again, many underserved communities don't have the luxury of going out and buying a generator at Home Depot and spending $1,000 or $800 or whatever the issue might be. So we must recognize the importance that this disproportionately impacts multiple communities at hand. But I think being responsive, being transparent, and being accessible and trying to help people in real time, because these are people's livelihoods on the line, and we must be there for them. That is the fundamental role that government we play as a safety net. And oftentimes many individuals will not know who their representative is unless there's a problem. And when there is this problem, they need us. And if we're not there, then there's zero confidence in the capacity of government to function effectively and the basic necessities of living. And this is what we're talking about, the basic necessities of having your light and your power on, and or having clean, breathable air, water, of just basic fundamental life in our country. So, but again, I'm curious, how do you connect with individuals when they're in this dire need?
Yeah, we've kept it pretty clear. We've made a hotline, and that hotline is open all the time. People can call it because they're experiencing joblessness or experiencing homelessness or going through some issues related to COVID-19. I believe that these natural disasters we've seen in Georgia, they have always called our legislature back into session to appropriate funding. So when are y'all going back into session? What's your legislative calendar looking like?
Yeah, we go back in January, and as you can imagine, given the separation of powers and the executive branch and the legislative branch, there is that natural tension in which we are not currently in session. And so the governor is making a number of executive orders in which the legislature now, because the Democrats are in control of both the legislature and also the executive branch, we are looking at the oversight capacity and the transparency, so that when these executive orders happen in real time, that we are doing our jobs and the functionality by ensuring that the oversight is done and that the resources, whether it's the PPE or the vaccinations or whatever the issues might be, are effectively utilized and implemented accordingly, and that we can address these issues in real time. So it's an ongoing effort that we're doing on a daily basis, but I know that you can appreciate the balance of powers, and sometimes there is that friction between the legislative and executive branch.
That's wonderful. Well, I would like to close us out here today by re-quoting each of you. You all deserve to be in the next Energy Times magazine. And so, David, you were talking about the Toyota Environmental Challenge by 2050. Rebecca, you were talking about why being pro-environment is a good thing and a just and equitable transition. And Assemblymember, you were talking about what it smells like, what it feels like during COVID-19 to be in these wildfires, and how this is not just the regular issue of shelter in place. It is quite dire in this time. I would like to thank you each for tuning in from Chicago, Kentucky, California, and Texas. Here in Georgia, it's happy hour time. It's 5 o'clock here. We are about to join the Leading in Color celebration this evening. We will be exiting this online room and joining another one. So everyone, go get your coffee mugs or your tea. I've got my mug with my great aunt on it. I know you probably can't see, but we will be enjoying a lovely celebration with you to connect informally with some of your favorite LGBTQ leaders from around the world. Thank you for joining us today. Please stay safe and wear a mask, and we will see you next year at this same conference.